Hey everyone, and welcome to week 6. Oh my gosh, we're already halfway through, and hopefully you're learning and getting to know some things about environmental education and environmental STEM education. And so as we build on those things going forward, it'll be important to really start narrowing down to kind of a focus for a local environmental issue. So just some feedback on the reports that you did. So many of you did a great job of really thinking about a local environmental issue or a statewide environmental issue that your students could actually be thinking about, or ways that you might in the future incorporate those with students or in informal educational environments, so that you can make those connections to other content areas besides just science. And so project-based learning is something that helps students to find relevance in their work in school and outside of school, and to really decide what kinds of things are they passionate about. So hopefully that you got a chance to really think about that, and you will use that information going forward. So this week we're going to talk a little more about just kind of, this will be the last week where you're building background on environmental education. And so this week we're focusing on the environmental justice. And so I've provided some resources for you in week 5 to start looking at those. And then so for week 6, you're going to actually respond to a discussion forum on environmental justice and answer some prompts. Oops, sorry, I thought that was the actual assignment, not a resource. And so this is the one that I meant to connect with. And so the questions you're going to be responding to are: what is environmental justice? When considering environmental issues that you chose for your report and that you'll choose for your implementation project going forward, is what populations may have been impacted most negatively by this issue, and how has this contributed to the problem? Are there efforts to confront these issues currently, and how might these issues be addressed in the future? So, for example, if your topic was deforestation, who are the populations that are being impacted, maybe in many different ways? First, by a lack of resources now to drive economic resources. So, for instance, many of our timber towns in Oregon have actually been economically depressed after the timber has disappeared, or restrictions on how much timber can be used. And so who are the populations that are more negatively impacted by those things, and what is being done to address that? And so, or is there something being done, or should there be something done? So if you're looking at, for instance, water security or availability of clean water, you can think about, how has, well, for example, even locally in our Willamette Valley, Detroit Lake, because of climate change, has been experiencing, and other water sources across the state has been experiencing increased algae blooms, and that has affected our water filtration and sanitation plants, overwhelmed them, and they haven't been able to filter the water. So we've had to rely on other sources, or to boil our water for a period of time. So just thinking about that, after you've reviewed those resources, maybe found some of your own, respond to this. You have to actually also respond to one other person's. So that is due on May 9th. I'm going to put our to-do list up here so you can see that as well, and I'll be referencing that. So that is described in this first bullet. So the other thing that I want you to start thinking about, and under the resources, under week 6, you'll see that I have started to prep you for your next assignment, which this one's going to take a little longer than just the discussion post. So I want you to start working on that. So you're going to be reviewing and evaluating curriculum. So that is the purpose of your textbook, the project learning tree curriculum was designed and developed as an environmental education curriculum, and it actually began, if you read some of the history of that, back in the 70s. And using some tools, you're going to evaluate that curriculum. Or if you really find that that curriculum is difficult, I know it's not as applicable to high school, so you can also look at the open science ed curriculum. So one of those two, but I think both of these resources would be valuable resources for teaching environmental education, either in a classroom, middle school, high school, elementary school, or informal science. We'll talk a little bit about that too. And so, or even making connections if you're teaching, let's say, social studies, and you want to make connections to project-based, community problem-based curriculum. So you're going to evaluate one of these two curriculums. There's some other curriculums here that are options, but I would recommend that you stick with those. And then your tools that you're going to use is you're going to use the Guidelines for Excellence that you've already reviewed on environmental education. I've linked that there. And then, and so if you look at this resource too, it actually has guidelines for different kinds of environmental education. So you're going to probably be focused on K-12, and you'll download that one. But there's also ones for informal education. So if you want to use guidelines for other kinds of, like the non-formal environmental program guidelines, you could also evaluate them using that. So that's the first criteria, is to use the guidelines. And then the second one is to use the STEM attributes. So evaluating the curriculum for STEM as well. Some of you have seen this in other courses, but this is from the STEM Hubs partnership in Oregon. And so they developed this criteria for really looking at STEM curriculum and making sure that it meets the criteria of what we would consider a fully integrated STEM curriculum. So using those two tools, you're going to evaluate some curriculum. And so that assignment you'll be working on in week 7. And so just to start thinking about that, you're going to want to make goals for that. And so this week I'd like you to just review the guidelines for that study and get an idea of, so it's linked here, but it's also linked here under the assignment, so you can pull that up and look at what you're going to be expected to do for that. So that is what you're doing going forward. The last thing I have on the to-do list for this week is to also start thinking about, you're going to have to do a site visit for some sort of environmental education site. And so this is, hopefully this will be fun and you'll maybe incorporate it in doing some sort of activity with family members or friends, or, you know, something that might be interesting that you've been meaning to take a look at and go see. And so some options for that. There are a few charter schools, or magnet schools is what they used to call them, that are specifically geared towards environmental education. So for instance, the Jane Goodall Environmental Middle School, this is in Salem, Oregon. You could request an opportunity to come visit and talk to a teacher there and see how they are teaching environmental education in a specifically designed school for environmental ed. You could do some informal settings like the Marine Hatfield Science Center, the aquarium, the Oregon Gardens, the Oregon Zoo, Children's Museum. Connect with somebody in outdoor school. Though a lot of the fifth grade classrooms are doing outdoor school this month. And so if you have the opportunity to join in, or at least talk to someone about that, that would be a good idea, to do like a site visit to somewhere where they do outdoor school. The OSU Extension Services has many different programs for teaching environmental education outside of the classroom, in the classroom, like their agriculture in the classroom services. So fish hatcheries, forest centers, there's many choices for this. So pick something that's relevant for you. And again, you just need to start thinking about this going forward, because you're going to do that visit week 8. So yeah, lots to start thinking about this week, and hope you had a good weekend. And I look forward to seeing your timelines and your history one-pagers for the assignment this week. And let me know if you have any questions.